these women are completely out of touch with reality. And you're right, ABC should wake up.
Democrats in the media are now unloading all their nasty attacks on rising Trump White House star and new press secretary, Karoline Leavitt. Watch this.
Chaos seized the set of The View the moment Caroline Leavitt stepped into the public eye, revealing shocking details that left the host struggling to regain their composure. Despite facing a storm of jabs from Democrats and mainstream pundits, Caroline, a rapidly rising star in Donald Trump's circle, seemed unfazed. She was new to the White House press secretary role, yet wasted no time firing back at her critics. If you've been curious about what caused this bizarre on-air collapse, and why everyone's buzzing about Caroline's unfiltered commentary, buckle up because you're about to find out.
She's probably been put in there because, according to Donald Trump, she's a 10. You know that's what it is.
The frenzy erupted when Caroline arrived as Trump's official spokesperson, immediately setting off alarm bells among liberals who rushed to discredit her. Within hours, detractors slung unflattering and sometimes downright petty accusations against her, claiming she was chosen more for her appearance than her substance. But if they hoped to make her back down, they picked the wrong fight. Caroline went on camera, calling the attacks laughable and pointing out the glaring hypocrisy among certain hosts who claimed to champion women while ridiculing a young female for her looks. From the start, Joy Behar tried to paint Caroline as just another inexperienced pretty face. Anyone familiar with Joy's brand of commentary knows she takes pride in defending women, until, that is, a woman she disagrees with enters the scene. While lecturing others about female empowerment, Joy decided to tear down Caroline's achievements by insinuating she was chosen solely for eye candy. That's a serious contradiction, especially from someone who insists women need to stand together in male-dominated industries. Naturally, Caroline refused to brush this off. She insisted that this brand of shallow commentary was precisely why Americans lose faith in mainstream media. But it wasn't just Joy who found herself tangled in this mess. Greg Gutfeld from Fox News couldn't resist tossing in his own wit, turning Joy's remarks into a viral punchline that dominated online chatter. While Greg's style often involves comedic jabs, his ridicule shed light on what many viewers had been thinking. If Joy had accused a younger liberal woman of getting hired for her looks, she would have been labeled anti-feminist instantly. That double standard wasn't lost on the audience. Caroline took the conversation further, pointing out that the same circles criticizing her have slammed countless Republican women who dare to rise in politics. She reminded everyone that if liberals truly believed in female solidarity, they wouldn't resort to cheap insults whenever a strong, capable woman leans conservative. Her blunt take caught the hosts off guard, sparking a moment of near silence on set, a rarity for a show that thrives on constant chatter. Not to be outdone, Whoopi Goldberg jumped in, known for attempting to mediate controversies by offering a maternal sort of guidance. Whoopi tried to pivot the blame onto Caroline. She accused the young press secretary of refusing to embrace wokeness, going so far as to claim that without social awareness and inclusion, Caroline wouldn't have her position. Yet the way Whoopi tied civil rights to modern wokeness perplexed viewers and left Caroline plenty of room to respond. With laser-like focus, Caroline outlined why these buzzwords don't necessarily equate to fairness or justice, and how conflating them only muddies important social issues. That's where the conversation took a turn for the surreal. Whoopi conflated basic civil rights milestones, such as women and people of color achieving the right to vote or attend certain institutions, with the modern concept of wokeness. Caroline seized the moment to highlight that it's entirely possible to champion equality without resorting to what she sees as restrictive political correctness or empty virtue signaling. The segment went viral almost immediately, with clips circulating on social media showing Caroline calmly dismantling Whoopi's attempt to lecture her. Still, no segment of The View would be complete without identity politics creeping in. After Caroline used her first official White House press conference to blast the media for eroding public trust, Whoopi responded by throwing out the race card, an old favorite. Instead of addressing the press's tendency to spin narratives, she deflected by talking about how historically marginalized groups were kept out of schools and jobs. Caroline had expected this pivot and swiftly called it out as a tactic designed to avoid addressing real concerns about media integrity. Liu Wen, Whoopi finally stopped talking. You could almost sense the tension seeping through the screen.
Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
The irony grew thicker when, instead of standing up for Caroline, Whoopi criticized her for not appreciating the same inclusion the older generation had fought for. Meanwhile, Joy Behar's earlier remarks reducing Caroline's qualifications to superficial factors went unmentioned, highlighting a glaring inconsistency in their entire argument. Why leap to preach about women's rights when it's convenient and ignore blatant belittling based on appearance? At that point, Caroline reminded the public that she isn't the only voice pushing for transparency. She pointed out how The View host previously accused various high-profile conservatives of disturbing behavior with virtually no proof, even suggesting that Elon Musk was connected to elaborate conspiracies. According to Caroline, these are the same people who cry disinformation whenever Republicans offer alternate viewpoints, yet they themselves have been caught peddling wild theories. Caroline further hinted that the host's knee-jerk criticism of Trump stems from an inability to sway public opinion as they once did. She noted that after a series of failed narratives, the conventional media began doubling down on half-truths, hoping viewers wouldn't notice. However, the blowback they're facing indicates the public is, in fact, paying close attention. Once Caroline pointed this out, the show's panel looked visibly rattled, as though they realized the once tight hold they enjoyed over the public narrative might finally be slipping. In a particularly bold move, Caroline announced a significant overhaul in the White House press seating arrangement, explaining that a new media section would be introduced to keep the old guard accountable. This revelation apparently caused heads to spin at The View, given that their show leans heavily on traditional gatekeepers who decide the flow of information. By giving new media outlets a seat at the table and reinstating credentials for journalists previously shut out under the Biden administration, Caroline signaled that conventional networks could no longer monopolize the conversation. Naturally, the panel took offense. Sonny Hostin scoffed at the idea of unvetted reporters challenging established institutions, implying these newcomers wouldn't meet rigorous journalistic standards. But Caroline's stance was clear. Legacy platforms had abused their power, dismissing outsider voices and shaping public perception for too long. The days of dismissing alternative viewpoints simply because they're less mainstream might be rapidly coming to an end, and that clearly terrifies The View. In an unsurprising twist, Whoopi and Sonny doubled down, warning that credentials could be granted to people who just say whatever they want. That triggered a wave of mockery from political observers, who recalled how the show often dramatizes stories, repeats unverified rumors, and frames them as truths. Suddenly, the very concept of free press, a principle the show claims to uphold, became a threat in the eyes of the hosts. Meanwhile, social media platforms roared with applause for Caroline's ability to stand her ground. Many pointed out that mainstream media's frustration with the expansion of press access only reveals their desperation to maintain the status quo. Caroline, it seems, isn't merely pushing for alternative viewpoints. She's thrusting accountability into the spotlight, challenging networks accustomed to dictating national discourse with minimal oversight. Later, the show tried a classic tactic: corner Caroline about illegal immigration, presumably hoping she'd stumble over complicated numbers or implicate Trump's policies as harsh. Instead, she turned the question back on them, stressing that violations of US border laws aren't trivial. She reminded viewers that focusing on the well-being of lawful citizens isn't immoral, and in fact, it's a cornerstone of national policy. This exchange sent the View panelists into another meltdown. Their attempt to paint Trump's agenda as heartless backfired, reinforcing the idea that they prefer narratives where conservatives are always villains. By calmly and logically defending legal immigration, Caroline burst their bubble, demonstrating she was far more knowledgeable than they assumed. Watching her maintain composure throughout the ambush was a turning point. It flipped the script on who really had the upper hand in that interview. Beyond that specific segment, Caroline noted that her strategy has always been to expose legacy. Media's game plan, everything from sensational coverage to selective outrage. She cited examples of The View ignoring stories about their favored politicians' missteps while amplifying every single rumor about Trump. According to Caroline, this selective approach is precisely why modern audiences increasingly abandon traditional outlets for independent or new media platforms. Toward the end of the show, Caroline dropped a final bombshell. The View has morphed into a mouthpiece for establishment politics, particularly the Democratic Party's globalist wing that prioritizes cosmetic inclusivity over actual problem solving. She argued this approach was one of the reasons Americans have grown weary of mainstream commentary. They see how narratives are engineered, how critics are silenced, and how the show refuses to own up to its inconsistencies. As soon as Caroline made that statement, viewers online launched into fervent discussions, many concluding that The View has drifted so far left, it's losing moderate and conservative viewers altogether. No matter what angle the host took, Caroline had a response ready. She hinted that the Democrats backing The View made an irreversible mistake by assuming the public was too passive to notice contradictions. With the rise of new media, there's a rapidly growing network of commentators who question every narrative. The show pushes. Even the smallest falsehood can go viral in a matter of hours, and The View is quickly running out of excuses for its one-sided coverage. By the time the credits rolled, it became clear this isn't just about Karoline Leavitt or one fiery encounter. It's about an entire media environment where established voices are frantically clinging to control while newcomers demand transparency. Caroline, for her part, seems poised to keep pressing forward, calling out any inconsistencies she sees. So, what happens next? Will The View learn to adapt? Or are we witnessing the beginning of the end for mainstream daytime talk shows that rely more on partisan theatrics than balanced insights? Is Caroline's push for media accountability a sign of things to come across the political spectrum? As more viewers grow disillusioned with stale, biased commentary, the power dynamics between legacy platforms and fresh voices could transform. If this unfolding story proves anything, it's that business as usual is no longer cutting it. Let's hear your thoughts. Are we on the brink of a full-blown shift where new media overtakes legacy outlets? Or do you think established giants will find a way to claw back their influence? Share your opinions, stay engaged, and remember, this is just the opening act. Caroline's clash with The View has sent a powerful message. The era of unchallenged narratives is coming to a close. If you're hungry for more in-depth breakdowns on media bias and the future of political coverage, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. The battle for honest dialogue has only just begun. And if Caroline has anything to say about it, these so-called media elites won't be dominating the conversation much longer.